Hi guys, welcome to the Improvement Season podcast. I am Steve Hall and I'm joined by my buddy Pascal Flor. Say hello, Pascal.
Hallo Pascal.
Guten Tag, Pascal.
Guten Tag. Na, wie geht's dir?
Sehr gut. That's nice. Okay, right?
Steve, not bad at all. I mean, I can see that you have a couple of German clients, that you've been to several different podcast shows that are usually done on German. Well,
yeah, I should have probably tried on those. I did German GCSE. I got a C. That was my worst grade, which makes you feel really smart. But I was not predicted good grades. I was like classic, quite a dumb kid, but I just worked my ass off.
Mate, I'm so bad in German as well. Like, honestly, Katie is always laughing about my grammar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm so bad at it. It's unbelievable. I'm ashamed of that, but I blame the Danish education for that, and also because I always was more interested in English than in German.
How many languages can you speak?
3.
3.
However, I learned 5, kind of. You can't really call or count Japanese towards that.
Oh, wow.
I only took like a couple of classes and then I ended up like, okay, I don't want to go to that place. But I had French for 3 years as well. Nothing stuck with me.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
I can remember, this is a real tangent, but I can just remember doing oral exams and I wouldn't even try and do the act. Like, you're meant to do the accent, aren't you? And I just sounded like a typical British, just like, Guten Tag. Sehr gut. Ich weiß nicht.
Yeah, it's so when it comes to German, it's a little bit sad because when I was visiting evening school, the German teacher of mine, she always said like, "Oh, Pascal, you're such a good writer, but your grammar is really not good at all. Work on that a little bit more, and you are doing fantastic exams and stuff like that." So on her recommendation, I actually bought a little grammar book, read through it like once, not really actually reading through it. I just, had a look at it and just left it, right? Unfortunately. But she basically said that I am a good writer. I have amazing thoughts that I bring to paper, but the thing is that my grammar is not that good, so it's hard to read.
It was funny. I think Charlotte was uploading the podcast the other day and she was like, Pascal does these, doesn't he? Like I think it was the timestamp. She was like, why are there so many commas? And I laughed out loud because I was like, Pascal said that he uses too many commas.
Oh God. Hey.
Brilliant.
Yeah, for the next time I simply don't.
No commas anymore.
Any kind of commas anymore. Oh God. Yeah. Funny enough that she brings it up.
Yeah.
Because we just like 2 episodes ago, we talked about it.
Oh dear. Right. So what's happened this week? You're still dieting. How's that going?
It's going well, actually. No issues whatsoever. I mean, now it's only 6 weeks in. Not really feeling that much of the diet so far. Once again, I mean, it's not really a surprise after 6 weeks, and I'm pushing it again a little bit harder at the beginning, but yeah, things are going well, and I'm feeling so much better. It's crazy because I just like to be a little bit leaner. It just feels better on a day-to-day basis, and you're not really out of breath every single time you're going up the stairs. So I can see it with Katie now. She just, it kills her going up the 3rd floor.
She's not that deep into it either.
No. She weighed herself yesterday, and she is, I think, 4 kilos up or so. I mean, the child in it for itself is not really heavy at that point. So we are now, I hate it when people say we are pregnant or so, right?
I do it with my clients though. I'm like, we're going to get through this week. And I'm like, we? You, I mean.
No, Katie is in the 16th week now. So when she's coming back from the holiday, she's going on a snowboard trip with her parents and Hugo. And I decided not to go because 10 days is a little bit too long for me. So I'm staying at home. When she's coming back, we have an appointment at the doctor's to find out what the gender is going to be.
Oh, exciting.
Which is really, really exciting.
You already know the name, Steve.
Yeah, Steve or Wesley.
It was Tony, right? Tony.
Yeah, Tony. Yeah, I was super excited. But what I wanted to say is I just feel better in general being just leaner. And also just when I look at myself, I'm so much more satisfied with the way I look. Yeah. But can't complain. Everything is going well on that front. And training, nothing to report there. Has been the first week, or is still the first week of the new meso cycle. So nothing's really too crazy or too exhausting. Just going through the workouts. But it's always funny, and we've talked about it offline, how quickly the body adapts to a certain stimulus. Because whenever I'm deloading, whenever I had a time away from something like art, well, let's just stay with the deload, right? And when I'm then going into the new mesocycle and doing like 2 sets of RDLs, I'm sore as hell. And then throughout the mesocycle, like week 4 or so, I'm doing so much more work overall, and I'm not getting the response anymore, which I definitely got at the beginning of the mesocycle. It's crazy, right? Because you would expect something else, but the body is just so good at adapting so quickly.
Yeah, I said that the same. I was like, yeah, 2 sets of squats and a little bit extra got me like really sore. And then in the final week, I'm doing 5 sets and like over double the amount of work, and I don't get anywhere near the same response, which is exactly, it shows the volume landmarks right there. Minimum effective volume, maximum adaptive volume to kind of maximal recoverable. Like the adaptation, that's why we have to increase and progressively overload. It makes complete sense. It's funny, I had one of my clients, Anna, for the first time went through her primer phase, which is, for the listeners who, I'm sure they all know actually, like a lower volume phase where you essentially pull back and focus more on kind of intensities rather than progressing volume. You let kind of a lot of the fatigue from that sort of aspect reduce, resensitize many pathways. And she's back into massing now. And she's like, I wasn't sure about the primer phase, but coming out of it, I'm so sold on those. And it's really cool to see that. It's very similar to like when people go through deloads for the first time.
It's so funny because I think I'm using primer phases with my clients a little bit more frequently than you do. And whenever I do, people are at first a little bit skeptical. Oh, okay, heavy compound lifts, more so in the lowerish rep range. Volume stays somewhat steady throughout it. I don't know, right? And then when they are coming out of it, first session, holy shit, I am so sore. That is unbelievable. With a relatively speaking, low amount of volume to what I've been doing in the past. Crazy. So you are basically kind of resetting things. I don't know. So when we're always talking about resensitization or resetting things, I don't know if I like those terminologies.
Sounds so bro sciencey, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. But you get the idea what I mean by that.
It's like a lot. It's people. I think when you put it into the context of like we see it with caffeine. Like if you don't have, or even alcohol in general. Why in gas in general? Alcohol, caffeine, when you don't have it for a long time and then you have it, it's like woof. Or if you know, even in down to like if you don't eat your favorite food for a long time and you have it, you're like, oh, that tastes like so. It's just biological systems. They adapt, they get resistance, you refresh it. It's primer phases to me very similar to like taking maintenance phases within diets. And it's hard to do them because it's like, do you know that taking that maintenance phase from the diet is going to lead to overall better, more successful fat loss in future? Or am I just better off just going? And everyone's tempted to just keep pushing because that's like an obvious change. And it's the same with like, oh, should I go for a lower volume phase rather than pushing for another kind of higher volume hypertrophy phase? Or actually, would I see more steady, consistent, better growth by just going through a lower volume period? Is finding that sweet spot of how often to kind of put those in. And you said you do them more frequently. How often, do you know, like roughly how often you're putting them in?
Every 4th or 5th meso.
Okay.
Usually. Okay, but this is then also like every 20th week or so, which is not that bad. No. I mean,
that's similar to, I'm like it depends what they're doing. more frequently, probably if they're like long-term fat loss, because then it's a maintenance from that as well. Every like 6 to 12 months generally. So probably not too dissimilar. But yeah, the last time I did one was a lot over a year ago. Yeah. So
yeah, that's crazy.
I'm due one. I'm definitely due one.
Yeah, but touch on that. I mean, talk about your past week, what you've been up for, and what's the plan moving forward?
So this is I can't believe it's already passed this long. I think I finished my mini cut that I fasted in September last year. And then I've been massing ever since. So this is coming to like my 15th week of massing again. And I hit 198 pounds today, heaviest ever, which is pretty exciting. I'll laugh so hard if I end up hitting 200 pounds, just as suddenly I just see a growth spurt and I'm like, shit, I planned to hit 200, but I didn't expect it to happen. So anyway, this is my 5th week of this mesocycle. And actually it feels, I know last time I was like, I'm not sure I can do a 5th week. And that 5th week was very much like, there's small improvements in performance from the week prior. I did better this time. So every week has been pretty consistent improvement. So this week has been like a good solid week, hitting good PRs, hitting good numbers. Every session's feeling pretty nice. So that's really cool. Today's literally my last session of that. Then I'll be doing a deload and then going away with Charlotte a week today. We're going to Seville. We haven't got any hotels booked or anything, but we have the flights booked, which is, I guess, the most important thing.
So you're just sleeping on the street.
Yeah. Just sleep wherever we can. I don't know, in Spain, what do they have?
So did I ever tell you about my desire when I was younger? Because I once heard that the homeless people in Spain are living the best life of all of the homeless people there are, because they are lying on the beach the entire day. They're tanned to the T, and they actually look like they enjoy it.
So I'm gonna be like Charlotte. I booked the hotel. Yeah. It's on the beach.
I don't think that this is actually the case, Mark. I mean, that they are enjoying the
I
homeless
expect
life.
It's awful. They're probably very dehydrated and risk of getting sunburn all the time.
That very well be the case, but at the same time, when you're living in some city like Berlin, people, especially in the wintertime, they freeze to death. Yeah. There are extra buses that are picking up homeless people so that they don't have to sit outside, and then they're just driving around to keep them warm. Anyway, that was always like a joke of mine. Whenever, or if I ever become a homeless guy, I will travel down to Spain and lie on the beach the entire day and just have a chill time there.
So for me, it's happened again where I've deloaded and then I'm going away. So it's like it will be 4 days of I won't do any gym. I did a little bit when we went to Greece. I won't do any this time. So it acts as a nice actual active recovery, which when we think about the term resensitization, it probably resensitizes you in the quickest period of time. So that'll be nice because that'll give me some extra and I won't need to do so much time maintaining. I think I discussed with Pascal off air, my plan is to come back after the holiday, do probably a couple of weeks of lower volume and maintain my weight, which I hope to hold around 198. If I can hold that, I'll be really happy. I'll be really annoyed with myself if I come back from the 4 days away and I'm down like 4 pounds. I will like literally pull my hair out. If it's 1 day, I'm fine, because salt and things would be probably less because I salt everything like a crazy man. But if I don't go back up to close to 200, which I hope I will in that 2 weeks, stabilize there, then I'll probably go through a small mini cut, because I think similarly to you, luckily I hold my body fat pretty well in terms of it's fairly even on my body, I would say, mostly though on my like glutes, on my hamstrings, over my back. So I look leaner than I am, I think, to some people. And I wouldn't say, I mean, if I'm 15% body fat, that's pretty good. I doubt I'm that lean. I'm probably closer to like 17, who knows? But I think similarly to you, I feel good. Like if I can get back down, I think to around the mid 180s, I think that'll be a productive zone for me to then push up to 200. And then that's probably where I'm like, okay, I probably need a longer period of time dieting to eventually do well and have a longer off season. Or I might, at that point, I haven't planned it all out, but by the time I get there, it might be the case that I'm doing the diet before the diet if I compete in 2020, or it might be the diet before the diet of a contest prep or a longer off season, depending on how I'm looking. So that's where I'm planning with things anyway. So I'm pretty happy about how everything's going. It's interesting to me thinking where I hold body fat. I never thought I held it on my arms, but I'm thinking I must hold quite a lot on my arms because they've grown so much. And I think there must be a lot of fat there because I can't have gained as much muscle as what the indication of like the increase in size would be.
Do you know the term bingo arms?
Yeah, bingo wings. Yeah. It's not flabbing. It's all right.
Good. It's so good. It's one of the best terminologies I've ever heard. Bingo I don't know. I think even Sammy told me that, like bingo wings, and I didn't know what she was talking about and referring to, right? And then she actually showed me a picture, like only some fat. I would assume that it was a fat American woman, like, because it's just such a cliche, hanging there and be like waving the arms and you could really see them just shaking tremendously,
jiggling all over the place. But the cool thing is, and the reason I don't want to do an extent, I think I perform well at this body weight, like a bit lower than this. I think this is getting to the point where I'm seeing some diminishing returns. Yeah, in terms of like fitness, I'm not really noticing in the gym that my recovery between sets or anything is poor, or my cardiovascular fitness is poor. My warm up at the start hasn't got harder or anything. If anything, it's got easier. But I do find the only time I find myself getting out of breath is like on client check-ins when I'm talking really quick and I don't take a breath and I'm like, why am I breathing so heavily? What is wrong with me here? So yeah, what I was going to say is from a outside the gym perspective, my kind of, I don't know why, I think libido is a great indicator for most people in terms of like their testosterone. And I'll just say mine's been pretty strong recently, like in the last few months, stronger than what it would ever have been. And I look back at my off season between 2014 to 17, I'm like, I was so skinny there. And I had probably like, I had no libido and stuff at that point, really no, like not like it is now. And I'd say mine's much more normal now. So that's cool. I think that's a good indicator always, because it's hard to know. But if you have a decent libido, I think it tends to show that. And in fact, I might see if I can get a little blood test through, I forget what they're called, Medichecks. See if I can get one done like next week during my deload, just see where my markers are. But it's unfortunate for more of the advanced ones, you have to go into a clinic, and it's just inconvenient.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they can't do everything from the finger prick one.
Because they need a bigger sample, or?
I'm not sure why it is. Some of them, they just require you to go to a clinic. I guess maybe it is the bigger sample, but yeah, it's not particularly
because
nice.
I know that when I did my huge panel, so hormone testing, like in 2000, what is it now? 2017, I think. I think it was 2017 already. So a long time ago. They took like 4 small floss or so, which is a huge deal, right? Because normally the last time I tested my estrogen and testosterone and free testosterone only, because I was curious, because it's a good indicator just to see whether there is still an underlying issue there. If they are off, then you want to have it checked like a little bit more in depth. And I did that, and they only took like 1 floss instead of 5. Right, so
5's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
It's not very nice. I'm not great with needles, so I do prefer the finger prick way. It is a bit fiddly and annoying, and I have a feeling you have to do it carefully because it can get oxidized and the sample can be ruined, but then they send you it back and say you have to redo it, whatever. So yeah, I might look to do one of those just to see where things are. But yeah, I'm pretty happy about where things are at the moment, and that's my future plans. I'm probably going to have to modify some things. Probably in my primer phase, I'll introduce some movements that I want to start progressing in. Something like the high bar back squat I've kept in for a long, long time, and it has started to progress more slowly. So I'm thinking about potentially rotating that out, not completely sure what I might rotate in. I think I'll go back to good mornings. RDLs have been doing me well for a few months. I think I'll rotate those out. I like keeping movements in for like 3-4 months and then having like a complete shift as you kind of run away with adaptation and then shift them in, assuming that there's kind of slowing up. If there's no sign they're slowing up, then I'll probably run with them again. But I quite like changing them that frequently for someone who's more intermediate advanced.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Sweet.
Sounds like an exciting time that is coming up.
It should be. I'm excited to see myself a little bit leaner. And I really hope that my body weight doesn't just, like I said, with the maintenance phase, I'm hoping it just doesn't, like my weight just shoots down and I was just holding on to like a lot of, I don't know, fluid from carbohydrates and from acute hypertrophy because of the metabolite work. And there's just lots of like stress there. But again, it's funny going away on holiday, peak mass once again, which is what I did when I went to Greece. So I'm nice and just beefy, not lean.
Yeah, for me, so right now, I'm just thinking of dieting, and definitely down to 75 kilograms, and then reassess where I'm at, and maybe
that'd be lean.
Yeah, and then maybe just take the time to actually gain up to possibly 80 kilograms again, and then start the contest prep for 2020. Then.
Wow. That would be so exciting. Imagine if we actually ended up competing the same year. That would be so exciting.
It probably, I mean, come on, let's be real. It's probably not going to happen this year with the birth coming up.
If you pull out the bag, everyone will be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm in a really good place still mentally and also just physiologically, why not? But I don't think that it's going to happen this year. It's just like, what are the odds? Right, that I'm actually in a really good like mental state while this is going down. There's a really, really low likelihood that it's going to happen. So I'm more so realistic and putting myself a little bit more of a pre-plan on everything so that I'm prepared and it's not like, okay, now I'm here. What am I doing now? Right. But there's a plan B or maybe a plan A and the plan B is competing this year. Maybe this way around. Yeah.
I'm super excited with I think for yourself, you do yourself more justice doing it in 2020.
Yeah, I think so. And especially because you were competing then. And I think AJ has planned to compete there as well.
There's a few people.
That would be just cool. I mean, yeah.
I will I'll have to see if I do. I want to, and it was always planned, but I really, really want to make sure I look good enough, like improved enough, not good enough. That's the long term. Improved enough from last time.
Yeah.
But
I just want to step on stage and be like, oh, holy shit, we've never seen Pascal like that. And that's actually
I'm excited for that.
Really good. Right. And if that's not the case, I don't know. I wouldn't really like to step on stage. It's
just need to come in shredded to the bone.
Yes. With the size, I can't compete, but hopefully with my stubbornness and actually just everything in life, hopefully that serves me well in that regard as well.
And everyone has a freaky body part of some sort, and we're going to see what yours is. It might be the veins. When you do a peak week, you just come out in veins everywhere.
Could possibly be. I don't know. We will see. Eh?
Cool. Let's get to questions. I don't think I have anything else of interest to... We don't... Oh, sorry, it's me questions. I'm completely out of things. So I apologize, first of all, guys. Oh, and if you want to get your questions in, join our email list. Yes. And once in a while, I email out asking for questions because sometimes I forget. And I have forgotten recently. So these are going to be some comprehensive answers because we don't have a ton of questions to get through.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question is from Full As Muffin. Full As Muffins, come on. So he says, hey, what's your thoughts on keeping RPE the same, or like a 2 RAR, he's saying, during the entire mesocycle and only adding sets when we can't progress via reps or loads? For example, if a given week we are able to add reps or weight, we don't increase the number of sets in this week for this muscle group as the volume has progressed via reps, and the next week recovery is on point, but we can't add reps or weight, so we add sets for this muscle group in this week.
My initial thought would have been, of course, this is a no-brainer, but at the same time, you have to think about it a little bit more in depth. Like, okay, when you're not progressing via reps and load, could possibly indicate that you are hitting your MRV there already, because when you're not able to progress in any kind of fashion, there's a huge likelihood that you are at your limit already. And then adding sets will probably be counterproductive in the long term, because you're only adding a little bit more fatigue on top of that. That being said, however, when you are keeping the RER the same or consistent, and I'm not entirely certain whether you are referring to keeping it consistent throughout all the sets, because sometimes people, and this is something that some of my clients have done in the past as well, like I give them a set RER, and that is like, okay, let's say you are supposed to do 4 sets of an RER of 3 in the rep range of 8 to 10. Some clients assumed that I meant, okay, keep the RER the same for all the sets. However, what I prefer, I'm not saying that this is wrong in doing that, but what I prefer in doing is actually, okay, this is the indicator RER for the first set you are doing. All right, so you're picking a weight that you can do in the rep range of 8 to 10 repetitions for an RDL of 4 for the first set. And then after that, you are trying to always push towards the higher end of the rep range. However, I would always recommend not pushing really to true failure. So if the next set then falls on an RDL of 3, perfect. Next set, the third set, when it then falls on an area of, let's say, 1 already, right? And then the last one on a 1 as well. However, there's a degradation of the repetition range as well, along with that. Let's say 10, 10, 9, 8 or so. Perfect. However, some people are doing it, they're keeping the area absolutely consistent, and then they let the reps fall wherever they fall towards to. Which is kind of, when you really think about it, kind of the same thing. However, I would like to think that maybe there may be a little bit more to it when you are pushing it closer to failure, simply due to the scientific literature when it comes to actually pushing to failure. We know that it's not really necessary to cause some kind of big stimulus, but being in the rep range area of 2 to 3 reps away from failure is probably a good range. And sometimes when you are in a higher rep range, you want to actually push closer to failure because it's causing then a higher hypertrophic stimulus. Thus, I like then to let it fall closer to the failure point, actually. It was a long-winded answer, but when it then comes to keeping the RERs the same, because your repetition may then drop because you're not really pushing it that close to failure, I may see the point in then increasing the set number because you're not really working so close to your failure point that it causes such a high fatigued environment that it may have detrimental outcomes in the long term. I hope that all makes still sense.
I think so. It's interesting because I think the idea of having an average of, I think we've talked about it before, a 2 RER makes sense. Like, it seems to be, in terms of fatigue to stimulus ratio, you get tons of stimulus, but you don't get so much fatigue that you end up doing insufficient volume. But I think you kind of described this, you miss out on potentially some progression in terms of you could do some less intense than that. So like the 3 reps in reserve, which still provide a hypertrophic stimulus. And it's kind of like, why wouldn't you do that? Then progressively overload past 2 reps in reserve towards closer to failure, because again, why wouldn't you do that? You can eke out some further progression. You potentially push for more hypertrophic stimulus via going closer to failure. Obviously, there's a load of fatigue, but then you probably recycle and deload. And then his kind of setup, I completely understand in terms of, it sounds like kind of triple progression, I guess, or very similar to triple progression, where you work within a rep range and you don't increase the load until you're at the top of the rep range for all the sets. And then you kind of add a set once you're at the top of the rep range with the top weight or whatever it might be. Progressive overload is the most important thing, and there's loads of ways to achieve it. I'd say this could probably work. I guess my worry is, again, mostly to do with the reps in reserve staying the same week to week. It's just going to be hard to progress. I know if I was hitting like 2 reps in reserve for all my sets this week, I wouldn't be able to progress next week because I'm too advanced to be able to progress that effectively. So I'd need some other form of progression. And then that's where you said about sets, where you could add like a set there, but that's assuming you're already able to recover and you're not pushing past that already. So you'd have to start off with a lower number of sets, I guess, initially. It's an interesting question, but I think that this sort of setup works better for people who can adapt that quickly. So more novice and intermediate individuals, I think that probably works quite well.
I have 2 things to add, and that is RER is always a subjective measure. So when you are actually cutting a set short because you think that you are at an RER of 2, it could possibly be that you're leaving something in the tank, or something on the table there, right? But when you have a metric such as an executed repetition, you are probably accumulating a little bit more volume on paper instead of leaving something in the tank. RER, it's like you said, Steve, when you are like 2 RER away from failure, it's probably still sufficient enough to cause a sufficient amount of stimulus. However, when you are misinterpreting the RER, or let's say you actually had 4 reps in reserve, but you thought you have like 2, right? Could possibly be that you are leaving a lot on the table because, once again, it's a subjective measure. And doing a repetition, actually, when doing a unit of moving the weight, is that you have done that. Like, it's in the books. Like, everything else is theoretically like, okay, yeah, could have probably done that, right? This is always then the question. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that Cody Hahn did a study that is called like the extreme volume study. You can find that when you're just searching for Cody Hahn, or go on the Stronger by Science website. There he breaks it down because he responded to a lot of criticism to that study as well. And there they progressed only via set numbers, when I do remember correctly. If not, sorry for actually saying that, but I do remember. I think I do remember that they only progressed via set numbers from week to week, because they wanted to see what hypertrophic stimulus that will bring when other variables stay the same. And yeah, they progressed. They caused hypertrophy, right? Because it is still a form of progressive overload, such as Steve already said. So yeah, there are so many ways to roam, and that is one of them as well. And especially when you're having like a triple progression in there, you can always progress in some way or another.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where if it's working for you, stick with it. I think there's no clear way of saying one's better than the other. So if you're finding something's working well for you, then stick with it, because it's obviously doing something right. And there's probably many ways to do and achieve that right that are all equally as good. So don't kind of keep switching between each. Find one that works well, stick to it, just like me and Pascal have our methods. And we kind of commonly use them with lots of clients because they work and they're consistent. And once you have a good setup, there's no point trying to complicate it for the sake of complicating it. Just have small tweaks.
Cool.
Next question.
Yep.
So we have Emily from Seattle. Have we had Emily before? I think we might have.
I think we had, yeah.
Just because she says she's from Seattle. So
yeah.
It makes me feel like she's commented before. Anyway, so Emily. Sorry, Emily from Seattle. What are your thoughts on the trade-offs of caffeine/coffee, i.e. stimulant to give you a boost before a workout, appetite suppressant, dehydrates you, etc.? Thanks very much. Love the podcast. Thank you for the love.
Does it dehydrate you? I think it was a common myth, wasn't it?
It is definitely a myth. That's been kind of proven to be... It does dehydrate you, but not because it's liquid itself. So yes, like caffeine can dehydrate you like on its own, but because you're having the liquid within the coffee, it more actually hydrates you than it does dehydrate you. So I'm not sure the downside to being an appetite suppressant before a workout. Maybe when you're massing, essentially it's just like use it when you need it, not when you're just kind of having it all the time. So you might think, okay, we've talked about caffeine periodization. I believe we have an article on the website. We've done infographics on it. When you're in a massing phase, you should be full of glycogen all the time. You should probably be mostly full of beans all the time. You're in your kind of peak position. You don't need any appetite suppressant. So when we're thinking about caffeine usage, it should probably be at its all-time low on average. When you're thinking about cutting, when you are lower on energy, you don't have full glycogen stores all the time, you are probably hungry quite often, you need the appetite suppressant, and to give you a boost before a workout, that's going to be super good. So it's probably going to be the highest it's going to be. And then maintenance phases, again, probably similar to a mass phase. Maybe you have, like, that's your middle point. So in terms of like overall caffeine usage on a macro level, most during a cutting phase, least during a massing phase, and then kind of intermediate during time at maintenance. And then you can look at a more micro level, like week on week on week, when you're more so overreaching, when you're more so near the end of a dieting phase, you're going to have more caffeine, more appetite suppressant for the pre-workout boost and for the hunger satiety. And same within like massing phases, you might overall have a lower dose, but you might still utilize it sometimes pre-workout to give you that boost. It's going to depend on the individual amounts. It will also depend on the individual, what they want to do. And then, like, some people just love coffee and have a pretty high intake all year round and don't necessarily get that much from caffeine. Pascal might be one of those people.
Yeah. Funny enough, because we yesterday had a chat with Miguel about it, and Miguel is someone who's drinking a lot of coffee, and myself included. Miguel and I were just basically like saying, okay, I came up with that and saying like, okay, I would be really curious to know whether I have just the enzyme to break down caffeine really quickly and rapidly, that I'm metabolizing caffeine super quickly, because I seriously don't feel the impacts of that. Could be that I'm just so used to caffeine that I simply don't get the response anymore, or I simply don't recognize the response anymore because it's just a normal state for me. But yeah, I would be just curious to know about that. And another thing I just wanted to say, because she brought it up, appetite suppressant. Funny enough, Steve and I talked about it a while back when Moss was analyzing a study about what did they look at coffee specifically, or was it more so caffeine in it for itself?
I'm not entirely sure, but I know there has been a study on caffeine, caffeinated and decaf coffee, and they found the decaf to be just as appetite suppressing, apparently.
Okay, cool. Because, I mean, we always need to make the case that decaffeinated doesn't mean like that there's no caffeine in that at all, right? But anyway, when I'm drinking coffee, I can say for certain that there's an appetite suppressant effect. Even that the study, and this is once again a perfect example of personal anecdote, that I've never began drinking coffee because of appetite suppressant. I don't know. That people said that it's an appetite suppressant or so, right? That was never my intention when I started, so I never knew about it. So of course, it doesn't really have a placebo effect for me when it's because of that, right? So I always drank coffee because of a different reason. And when I then heard about that study disputing the fact that it's not suppressing your appetite, I had to wholeheartedly disagree with that, because I can definitely tell that it suppresses my hunger sensation quite drastically. But it only comes from coffee. Yeah. And possibly there's some kind of other things involved in coffee that has somewhat of an appetite suppressant effect, which is not really correlated with the caffeine in it for itself. Most of the time, stimulants suppress your hunger. But when you're saying that the one study showed that the decaffeinated coffee and the normal coffee didn't really see any kind of difference there, then you would expect that it has nothing to do with the caffeine in it for itself, but maybe there may be other things involved in coffee that have an impact on your overall hunger signaling. And for me, I could definitely tell that, yeah, my hunger is being suppressed quite significantly, and I couldn't really say that the study aligned with my personal anecdotes.
Yeah, I'd agree. For me, Coffee is dangerous during my maths right now, because if I have a coffee, I can go for like 4 or 5 hours without even thinking about food, which happens on the weekend sometimes, and I don't mean it to happen, and then I have to eat way too much. But for me, again, caffeinated coffee is the one that suppresses it, not decaf. I don't get anything from decaf apart from hydration.
Interesting.
It also doesn't taste anywhere near as good. It's really bad. It's so bad. I don't think
I've never came across a decent decaffeinated coffee.
No.
So far.
Because caffeine provides a flavor, which you can't get. Even like if you have like decaf, Coke or Pepsi, again, I just get nothing from that. So, Cool.
Shall we move on?
Yeah. The next question is from Matt. So Matt has asked, I know hitting each body part twice a week is optimal. Does he? Should you do the same exercises, the same frequency, or should you alternate exercises each time you hit the body part? Example, DBS, then BBS, repeat. Or as long as you're hitting the muscles twice a week, that's all that matters. Or to optimize growth and strength, you should keep the same exercises for a month or 2 months, then change. Maybe that was like dumbbell bench. Let's say it's dumbbell bench and then barbell bench, but I'm not sure it was.
That could be the case, yeah.
So should we first pick apart why training a body part twice a week isn't necessarily optimal? I just think it's important to clarify. Well, first of all, clarify. Optimal is such a pie in the sky thing. I think it's nice to think about. I think it's nice to aim for, but it's not something to say you are being or know that you are doing, because we can't ever know. Everyone is different individuals, different at different times. What might be kind of best now might not be in future, and you can never possibly know because we can't measure it, and we can't measure. There's delayed effects, like there's just too many things going on. There's no vacuum, so we can't possibly know what's optimal. In terms of frequency at the moment, it seems to be, with the studies that we've got, and let me know if I'm wrong, Pascal, but it's overall volume for the week, and then frequency is a case of hitting that volume best, basically. So it's a way of divvying up your volume. So find the frequency that allows you to get the highest quality overloading volume for the week. So that might be, you can't train, you might think, oh yeah, every single day then, because that allows me to get the best volume. But there's no chance you're recovering from an overload session every single day for something like your quads. I very much doubt that. Whereas maybe for biceps, for calves, for abs, you could overload each day. So that might be something you want to think about. You might be able to get more total volume. So in terms of frequency, it's going to be different for different people, different muscle groups, at different levels of advancement. So that's frequency.
May I just jump in there quite quickly? When it comes to the interpretation of the scientific literature, when it comes on training frequency and resistance training, one of the studies we always like to look at is the one from Brad Schoenfeld, where they looked at typical bro splits, like training a specific body part once per week, hammer it really hard, versus actually training that 2 times or 3 times, right? And we have to also look at the majority of participants then. Most people who participated are actually coming from a bro split background. So it could possibly still be just the acclimation of the new training frequency that they've been able to just reap some rewards due to training them more frequently, but it's not really that much of the frequency in it for itself that was quote unquote magical or so. So yes, I mean, I just wanted to point that out. I think overall, probably the overall work you're doing is way more important than the training frequency in it for itself, because frequency, what I always like to call it, is just a means to spread the volume across or distribute the volume to ensure that you are hitting the body parts with an adequate amount of stimulus, not doing junk volume, and you are able to ensure a high amount of quality. And this is most of the time not possible if you are doing, let's say, a chest workout that lasts you 3 or 4 hours.
Cool. Perfect. And then the second part of the question was asking about, should you keep the same exercise or alternate your exercises? And I very much have just my general rule of thumb is 2 to 4 movements per most muscle groups. I think that's generally okay. For some muscle groups, it might be right on the lower end. For something like hamstrings, probably like 2 rather than having 4. For something like biceps, where there's loads of different exercises you can do, you can probably go up to the 4. So I would say if you are doing a 2 times per week frequency for a muscle group, I think if you're only doing 1 exercise each of those days, then have 2 different ones. But if you're doing more than 1 exercise on those days and you're within the 2 to 4, then you could have the same exercises twice a week. And I would just say keep that then the same within the microcycles, and within the mesocycle, don't kind of do squats and lunges and leg press and lunges and then do Smith machine squats and I don't know, Bulgarian split squats, and then don't alternate them all the time. So keep them steady throughout the mesocycle. That's kind of what I do there.
Yeah. It really depends on the muscle group, of course. Sure, when it's anatomically speaking, a smaller muscle group, you probably don't have to hit it from all angles with different exercises or so. But when it, for example, comes to the back musculature, I like to actually have a huge variety of exercises in there.
Like 10.
Simply because I like 20 or so. Right, going from one set to the next, and I mean every set is a different exercise to make it harder for everyone else in the gym, because you are occupying, of course, all of the machines at the same time. No, but what I mean is because there are certain exercises that you can then load a little bit heavier. Let's say the heavy compound lifts, such as when we're specifically talking about the back musculature, heavy bent over rows or penne rows, for example, which you preferably do in the lower repetition range, quote unquote, lower repetition range of the hypertrophy spectrum. You know what I mean,
6
right?
to 10.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean. This, and then I transition likely over to something like the first machine exercise or so, which is still hitting a lot of body parts in the back musculature in it for itself, simply because of the structure of the back is so complex. There are so many different muscle groups involved there. But then something, let's just say a lat pull down in the 8 to 10 repetition range, and then I move on to something like a horizontal pull another time that is not specifically working in the 6 to 8 repetition range or so, but more so isolating that kind of body part to make it a little bit easier to accumulate volume and to additionally have a different repetition range in there as well, to really make sure to hit all or to recruit all of the muscle fibers in there, which is probably already achieved with heavy compound lifts. But I mean, if you are still recovering in transition quite well and you are able to do a little bit more extra work in a higher repetition range, I think there's still a case for making that. So I'm actually covering quite a large spectrum when it comes to rep ranges, like everything from 6 to 15 reps. And thus, because of the variety is a little bit higher, I'm using more so a little bit more exercise variation in a given week. But this also then depends on the setup, whether it is a 5-day split or a 6-day split. And you could always make the case for, okay, why aren't you then doing just one additional set of penne rows or bend over rows, which is absolutely fine and a valid thing. But it's just like to cover a wide variety of repetition ranges. That's my main intention behind that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting on the back because it is like a big, like there's just, I don't know, fibers all over the place. My go-to for most people, if they're training with a decent frequency, if it's quite low and they have a low volume tolerance, then there's less exercise variance, but with a higher, than there is. But my default is like a pull up variant or chin up variant, a lat pull down variant, and then a kind of heavy bent over row variant or something similar to that. And then like a machine row or cable row for higher repetition ranges. I've just seemed to find that just really nice. You get the big heavy mechanical tension stuff, and then you get a little bit more of the other kind of drivers of hypertrophy. Not to say you don't hit all of them in the same, but yeah, it seems to work really well for the back.
Yeah.
But great additional point. Next question. And that was your great additional point, not mine. It might have sounded like self-serving. So this is Caden the Conqueror. Yeah, we definitely need to get some more people asking questions. It seems to be the same names. But that's fine. Thank you, Caden.
Yeah.
I said, can you please explain the benefits of RDL versus SLDL? I am defining RDL as the constant tension versus that I see Steve do on Instagram. Oh, version, sorry, not versus. So the ones he sees me do on Instagram. Straight leg deadlift is when you come at a dead stop at the bottom. Thanks for great content. You are both really top notch at podcasts. Thank you very much, Caden.
Thank you.
So I think that's our definition difference, basically. Straight leg deadlifts probably start from the floor and there's kind of a dead stop or a touch to the floor at least each time. And for me, the legs are more straight on a straight leg deadlift. There's still a slight bend, but straighter. For most people who can touch the floor, at least some people might not be able to have the mobility to get there. And then a Romanian deadlift is starting from a racked position. Don't generally touch the floor, a little bit more knee bend. Bar stays a little closer to the body than a straight leg deadlift might get further away. But I think that's generally our differentiator. I know some people kind of view them as the same. They are quite similar.
Yeah, but I think that, so because he was specifically asking for the benefits, I think that the RDL is just to accumulate a little bit more volume, in my opinion. And the SLDL is a little bit more of a variation of a normal conventional deadlift, but stiff leg with a little bit more of emphasis on hip hinge movement and a little bit more loading on the hamstrings and the glute specifically. And you can load it a little bit heavier. So basically, yes, from a mechanical perspective, they may be quite similar, but at the same time, they're not, because I like to use single leg deadlifts in a different context than I do RDLs.
Straight leg deadlifts.
A straight leg, not single leg. Straight leg deadlifts. I use them specific or more of the time as a substitute for just a conventional deadlift off the floor. For hypertrophy purposes, because you're still able to load them way heavier than just a normal RDL, in my opinion and in my experience. And the RDL is just, you can't go that heavy, at least in my opinion. I've seen some people do them quite heavy.
And well strong.
Yeah. But yeah, with the technique and all that kind of stuff and the mind-muscle connection, what I feel is just like RDLs, once you increase too assertively, you lose the mind-muscle connection quite quickly. There's just like, I don't know, there's something about RDLs. You're making the jump like progression from 1 week to the next by 2.5 kilograms. And all of a sudden, you're losing kind of the mind-muscle connection in the posterior chain, which is kind of odd. I don't know. With the SLDLs, it's more like, okay, being still explosive from the floor. You are putting yourself in a better position from the bottom, which you can't really ensure all the time with the RDL. You can put yourself in a good position and then pull and initiate the pull. And if you need a break in between, fair enough. So they have slightly different purposes, in my opinion. And
You know what? I might use a straight leg deadlift in my next mesocycle. I was going to go to good mornings, but straight leg deadlift, you've sold me on a straight leg deadlift. I haven't done them in so long, and I want to feel that difference again. But I think that was a good answer. I think for the most part, a lot of people will ask me like, why are you doing EZ bar rows instead of a barbell row? And I'm like, well, there's no specific reason. It's just variation. I'm just doing something different because variation is an important part. I don't know how important. It's a part of bodybuilding programming. You need to have some variation now and then. It doesn't need to be a big variation. Straight leg deadlift to an RDL, there's not a huge difference between them. I don't know whether I think my strength might be similar an RDL to an SLDL. I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I haven't done one in so long. I think initially at least it will be. But yeah.
Cool. I just feel like the difference when it comes to the loading portion is just also different as well. When it comes to, so the RDL there's a huge component on the eccentric portion of the lift. I'm not saying that you should just drop the weight on the SLDL. I still think that you should load it under control, but still, you will feel once you initiate the pull from a depth stop that your hamstrings fire extremely much. And this is not something that you experience to that degree with the RDL.
It's kind of like with the straight leg deadlifts, you're almost just starting a conventional deadlift with high hips and less quad drive, because it's just pings the hamstrings.
And I mean, with the RDL, let's be real here, there's still a stretch component. I mean, the stretch component is most of the time always present, 1 to up to 4 seconds most of the time. And that is a part of it, right? So I'm trying to think about it, but I've never seen someone doing an RDL with a pause. Paused RDLs done.
I've seen it a few times, but not. Yeah. I don't know if they do it on purpose. I think it's more they're a bit unsure about how low they are, and they're like,
okay, yeah. But because of that, there's also a stretch reflex, and this is something you're taking away with the SLDL. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, I actually, that might be the last question we get to, because we're at 56 minutes. I just thought, do you want to get to another one?
Oh,
I was just going to say
that.
I was just going to say, to reiterate your point in Romanian deadlifts, is something I've got carried away with load before. And I think you can make Romanian deadlifts look like a conventional, same with straight leg deadlifts. I think you can get into a trap, taking in too much knee bend, getting the quads involved, and they just turn into a conventional deadlift kind of, which I think is actually called something, isn't it? I've seen people doing them. They're called Yates deadlifts or something. No, Dorian deadlifts. Really? People do a RDL, but conventional deadlift, but not off the floor. And they're called Dorian deadlifts. Of them. I'm going to have to Google it. Really? But I've seen people doing something that looks like kind of not quite an RDL, not quite a conventional deadlift. And it's in between. And it's kind of called a Dorian deadlift, I think.
Never heard of that.
That's what I think. Sorry if I'm wrong. People might know.
When are we actually coming up? We are not jacked enough.
I'm making
to actually
Smith
turn
machine
some
squats,
kind of exercise.
Hall machine squats.
Yeah.
But as soon as I drop them, no one's going to do them again.
No, you should actually really simply call them Hall squats.
Hall squats.
All right.
We get to one more question. We've got 2 minutes.
Wes.
Okay, Wes. It's our buddy Wes. We'll do your question. If you get ill in a week 2 or 3 of the meso, should you just start the week when you get back after 7 days, or start over to week 1 and see the week off as a forced deload? I think we've answered this sort of question before, haven't we? With people getting ill and what kind of to do.
Yeah, possibly.
This is quite a specific situation.
Yeah. I mean, just to give my perspective of things real quickly, because I think with the last thing you said there, force deload and just move on, is the way to go, in my opinion, especially when it was a severe illness. So there are 3 things that I always say, like force deloads. That is severe illness, severe injury, or holiday where you don't want to train or can't train, right? And after that, you are starting with a new mesocycle.
Yeah, I think if you're ill for a week, that's an entire week off training. You've kind of lost your momentum. You've lost your everything that's going there. You've probably reduced a lot of physical fatigue in the musculature, but you've got a lot of hanging fatigue. So you're probably in a position to restart a mesocycle. I think that's a good idea.
Actually, it's the perfect opportunity to then take advantage of that, because you're probably resensitized from a muscular fatigue perspective. You had dropped the fatigue that has been accumulated already. Just give it another go. I mean,
I think
it's kind of a reset button.
Yeah, if it's half a week or less than that, then potentially kind of restart that week that you were meant to be doing.
Yeah.
But in any, you're completely right. Forced deload. So we managed to answer that question within the hour.
Oh yeah.
I saw someone comment that they were excited the podcast was an hour long, and I was like, these are always an hour long.
Oh, wait a second. We can already make an announcement, because yesterday, it was Sunday the 24th. I sent out an email and did a post over on Facebook that now the tickets are live for the London Seminar 2019 that is going to happen on the 11th and 12th of May this year, in obviously, as the name implies, in London. So Mike Isrotel, James Hoffman, and Gabrielle Fondero are coming to London. We are more than happy to organize the entire thing again. So you can head over to our website, purchase your tickets from the 1st of March, because then the ticket sale is going live 1st of March, 6 p.m. GMT, and make sure to be quick because we have some amazing tickets there this time around. And check out the Facebook post, because then you can actually see in detail what's being sold and stuff.
Mate, no one uses GMT anymore.
Yeah, no one uses GMT. Yeah, who the fuck uses GMT? Maybe just the guys who are also using the matrix system. Probably no one in the world.
So the only thing I'd say in addition to that is there's limited early bird tickets, isn't there? There's only a limited number.
Yes.
I can't remember how many we're limiting them to, but there is only a limited number. So
yeah,
we haven't given a certain time period. It's just first come, first serve.
Yeah, limited number of early bird tickets. Once they are sold, it's going up to the normal price. We have VIP tickets this year, again, also a limited amount. And we have exclusive, so the ultimate VIP tickets this year, which includes everything a normal VIP gets, plus a seminar t-shirt and an exclusive dinner together with me. No, it's not just me, but together with me, Steve, Gabrielle, James, and Mike. And that is limited to 10 people only. And the meal is actually being paid for as well, or is included in the price. So you're paying basically for it yourself, but it's included in the price. We are picking a restaurant, which is, just to spoil it already, McDonald's. And we are keeping
Take it around mine.
keeping the rest.
Just have a Domino's, just one large pizza, everyone gets a slice.
Happy meal for everyone. and a special toy you get as well along with that. So wrap it in the ticket like that. So you get a surprise meal with some kind of toy. And no, anyway, the ultimate VIP ticket, I would expect that it's just gone in no time. So if you want to get your hands on that ticket or a VIP ticket, better make sure to actually be online 6 p.m. GMT. So it's London time for those who are not aware of that. Visit our website and purchase the ticket.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We look forward to seeing you there. And as always, thank you for all your amazing questions, comments, and all that good shiz.
Yeah. Cheers, guys.